Good morning. Like many of you, I like to watch different kinds of videos. Uh, One reason, just for entertainment, I like to watch videos on little tiny Fiat cars that have Hayabusa motors in it that produce 200 horsepower crammed into them just for entertainment. It's not like I'm actually going to do that. I just like to watch, just like a lot of reviews. How to buy your first guitar. A review of Gibson J45, a mandolin, violins, you know. But I also see a great deal of review videos to help first-time buyers acquire one of the coolest instruments ever developed. The problem is, a lot of them are made by people that don't know what they're talking about. I don't want to run down rank beginners, but how many videos are there on YouTube? My review of a such and such mandolin. Now, I'm not a mandolin player, but this is what I think. Fit and finish, playability, they don't have any reference points. You know, really, well-meaning people, but when you're investing in an instrument, you owe it to yourself to either play the instrument first, or if you're buying online, which a lot of us do because we can't go to Chicago or LA or any other place where you can buy these instruments, we're relying on the knowledge we soak up from other sources. So tip number one, I appreciate this is kind of a dry video. You're not going to hear me play my mandolin. My wife is still asleep, but this video's intention for function, not for form. But let me grab a mandolin here so at least you can see one. Kentucky. Japanese made. KM250S. Spruce top. Maple sides and back. Beautiful mandolin. Be careful about advice because there's so much advice coming from no-nots. Number one. And so, go to the Mandolin Cafe forum. Just in your search after this video, just go Mandolin Cafe. And you're going to discover a source of information on everything mandolin, from experienced musicians, mandolin builders, shop owners. You'll be able to say, I discovered on a certain site a Kentucky KM150. This is not a KM150, but for an example, Kentucky KM150, Mandolin Cafe. Hit the go button, and you're going to see threads and comments about the Kentucky KM150. You could type in Kentucky KM150 versus an Eastman 305. For example, another mandolin. Mandolin Cafe. And you're going to get people comparing them. What about Kentucky mandolins versus Washburns? Mandolin Cafe. You're going to find actual expert opinions on that. So Mandolin Cafe is your greatest resource when you're choosing. You don't want to take the advice of somebody that went out and bought a $200 Epiphone, has never touched a mandolin before, and is doing a review on it, because they have no reference points. You're wasting your time. And also, if you're listening to this, that's why I don't worry so much about both my mandolins, the Gibson and the Kentucky, sound great, but I don't have a good microphone. And the microphones, as far as actual tone and volume, vary so greatly. So, you know, take it with a grain of salt. That's number one, Mandolin Cafe. Number two, construction, solid, carb versus plywood or pressed, with pancake style Army Navy exceptions, and I'll explain. Now, mandolins, as with violins, with the exception of the pancake models, which there aren't many of those around really compared to the other ones, they're not flat backs and flat fronts. They're actually, a good one is carved. Somebody sat in their little workshop or factory, a lot of them are from China, and using forms, starting off with a plantograph or even a CNC, whatever, pull it off because it's got a shape, it's got graduations, different thicknesses throughout. You know, the small instrument depends on craftsmanship, not just, no slam against flat top guitars, not flat pieces of wood. These things are actually carved into shape. Can you see the curve? Like a violin. And so you're not going to be able to get, say, a good quality mandolin. There's an exception to this. For $120, like you could get a decent quality guitar for $120 because flat surfaces are bigger, so it's not so dependent on the hand-carved nature of it. Let's just say that, the hand-carved nature of it. And so when you're in the $1 to, say, $300 range of mandolins, chances are you're going to get either plywood, which there's an exception here, I'm going to mention that, or you're going to get wood that was actually pressed, just pressed, not graduated, which means different thicknesses throughout, or hand carved. They just take wood and squish it together. It looks kind of like a mandolin, glue it together, blah, blah, blah. And you're going to lose out on tone. Doesn't necessarily have to do with playability, because playability, and I'll touch on it, depends on the fineness of manufacture and of the fretwork and the straight neck and the action, you know, very low action, because everything is precise. But you want to go for not pressed and not plywood, with this one exception. With this one exception I'm going to talk about. And you're not going to get something for nothing unless you're buying used and a really great deal. Good mandolins really don't start until you hit like the 400 mark and go up, and that's because of the hand-carved nature. I'm going to talk about that. You might want to get the greatest mandolin in the world for $200, but you're not. You're not. Body style, A versus F. I've got two things. And the FFs versus the oval. First thing I'm going to talk about is the body style. I do not have an F style. I do not have the Bill Monroe, Sonny Osborne, typical bluegrass looking scroll work on this. Now you might say, this is not a bluegrass instrument. It doesn't have the strap hanger on it. It's not an F style, it's an A style. But there really is very little difference. There's less difference between the A style and the F style sound-wise, because those Fs aren't hollow, those are blocks of wood, and it's basically the inner chamber of this. There's less difference between an A style and an F style because of the scrolls. Less difference than the quality of manufacture between A styles and the quality of manufacture between different F styles. You know, how it works out is it takes extra care and extra work to make those fancy little scrolls and points, and so you get more bang for your buck. If you're looking for tone and playability, you can get more of a mandolin in this style than you can in an F style, because so much extra goes in those scrolls. It's just, it looks pretty, but it doesn't do that much. Case in point, Gibson. This is not only a Gibson, it's the Gibson. Just kidding. Not really. You can get a used Gibson A9, which is shaped like this, or you can get a used Gibson, I'm not going to say F12, they're not really regarded that highly, F whatever. You can get a Gibson A9, maybe if you're lucky enough to find one, because people snap them up for about $2,000. It's a lot. I'm not going to spend that much on a mandolin. You probably won't either. But compare that to a used Gibson F model with the scrolls. You're going to be paying 3-4 times as much for a comparably produced instrument. That difference is just the scrolls. I would go for the A9. It's almost within my capability. But yeah, A style versus F style. Do you want to just pay for looks, or do you want to pay for a better mandolin? A $600 A model well, playing the odds here, statistics, so much better of a mandolin sound-wise playability than a $600 scroll model. The F holes versus the A holes. Now, yeah, this is where I may be the only one that said this on the internet, but not the only one that thinks it. Is that in a lower price mandolin, like $300 or $400, $500, you may be better off with the round hole because it's going to be bassier and a richer sound than with the F holes. Yes, when I watched a concert with bluegrass musicians, they were all playing this because it's got the good chop. But how many of us are seriously going to be performing, having to fight banjos, and, you know, having pickups on a mandolin eliminates that whole issue of having to cut through the instruments. How many of us are going to be performing Molly and Ten Brooks or Mule Skinner Blues on stage? Whereas there's so many different songs and stuff, you can play Led Zeppelin, what have you. The round hole in a lesser priced instrument will probably sound richer and deeper than this. So don't overlook an A hole, an A model mandolin with an oval hole. Do not overlook an A model mandolin with an oval hole. Next up, pricing. The exception of a plywood mandolin that gets good reviews, and this is one of the lowest priced ones you can get, which is nice. It's a decent mandolin, and it's the cheapest one. Good starter. And I've heard them played. I've heard them played with other mandolins. They're not bad for around $100, $125. The Rogue. I forgot the model, but it's A model Rogue. Cheap as heck. Now you go from $120 on up, and there's going to be an exception to this. I would not, unless you're a rank beginner, your first mandolin, spend anything less than $300-400. I really wouldn't, because what you wind up doing is you're leapfrogging. I don't want to pull the trigger. Let's just pull a number, $500. I'm not going to pull $500 out of my pocket or use a firm or Sweetwater card or something like that and spend $500 for a mandolin. I'm going to get a $250 one. Well, you've invested in that $250 one. Chances are you're not going to get any money back for it because they're worth nothing used. And then you're going to be disappointed in it, either because it's hard to play because it wasn't set up right, or it just doesn't have good tone. So you're going to wind up stepping up. Well, I'm going to go from a $250 one to a $350 one. And then maybe not be happy with that one too. So now you've spent $600 on mandolins you don't like instead of just spending that $600 up front and getting one that, oh, I love this tone. Now, it's true. There are Lors, there are Epiphones, there are Morgan Monroes, there's a lot of different manufacturers of mandolins, and a lot of people are happy with them, but your best bets, Kentucky, which has an incredible love amongst mandolinists, and you'll see that on the Mandolin Cafe. And Eastman's, good bang for your buck, especially in the A models. The exception, if you want to get $250 mandolin, would be an acoustic electric by Epiphone. You know, you set it up well, so it plays nice, the fretwork is good, the action's low. You're using pickups for the sound, which you can adjust, tone and stuff like that. You're performing on stage. You're a guitarist, but you want to have an acoustic electric mandolin. More power to you. You can probably get by nicely forever with the Epiphone acoustic electric or a Luna or something like that. But if you're strictly going for an acoustic instrument, your best bet's Eastman and Kentucky. And just about everyone on the Mandolin Cafe will agree with me. The one reason I say the Epiphone is I do perform on stage, not so much because of the you-know-what. And instead of trying to be close to the microphone, I've got an LR Baggs pickup. It's a really nice one. They're about $100 and something, that I can put on this one or this one. It just depends on my mood. But that's $100 and something on top of an acoustic, where you could have just, if you're not primarily a mandolin player, or you want a second one or a fifth one, if you've got MAS, mandolin acquirement syndrome, you don't need to bother with installing a pickup. The Epiphone would probably be a good bet. Now, if you want to buy used, I would much prefer to buy a used instrument. If given my choice of used or new, I don't care about scuffs or wear marks or anything. This thing's over 100 years old, and I love the character and the stories, and I don't need showroom brand new finish. I'm tone and playability over, I don't like that because it has a scratch on it. Reverb and Mandolin Cafe's classified ads would be good places to find used. I would be reluctant, unless you can travel and actually play the instrument, Craigslist or something like that, just from a private seller. That would be the exception. Reverb and Mandolin Cafe, people know what they're talking about. Reverb could have dealers and stuff like that. But that goes into number 5, especially with the Rogue, but anyone else. Only buy it if you see properly set up, or you go to a music store and play it personally, or have somebody that knows what they're doing play it to give you feedback. And by set up, I mean, there's a lot of points on this. The nut. Are the grooves set so there's almost no distance between the string and the first? What is the height of the strings above this? Did somebody go through and, which is no big deal, intonate, which means, sliding this bridge around, so at the, you're getting the right notes throughout the range. But you can do this your own. You should be able to set intonation. Just go to a YouTube video. But the Rogue especially, when you're selling a mandolin for $120 and it goes from the factory to your hands, I don't expect them at that price point to take every mandolin, like, a upper level one, at the factory, at the shop that produces it, to file the nut down, a little more, you know what I mean? Setting the intonation, setting the bridge. They don't have the time for that. They're offering a cheap mandolin, the Rogue. Boom, there it is. It needs to flow through a dealer or private hands that are capable of setting it up and making it so it plays well for you. Otherwise, you're taking your chances. So don't buy off of Amazon unless somehow it's connected to a real shop and you read it has been properly set up by professionals. I could go and theoretically, I'm going to purchase a Kentucky KM 270, which is an A style with a round hole. Go to Reverb. A bunch of people sell them. All about the same price if they're new. But what's going to tip the scale, even if it's $20, $30, $40 more, is that advertisement that says, we are known for our setup work. Every single instrument we sell has been gone through by a professional luthier and has been fine-tuned and set up. And so when that arrives at your door, you know that, like, the action's not going to be high, the neck is straight, it's going to be in good shape. Now, going back to the advice of no knots, just for the fun of it, sometimes I go to Amazon and I read reviews of things, and you get beautiful instrument, good voice, in the case of a Kentucky KM 270, and then you get the 3-star that says they promised that it would be set up and it wasn't in tune when it arrived. That is somebody that doesn't know what they're talking about. I would be very surprised if a mandolin is shipped different temperatures, especially in the winter, and it arrived in tune. You should be able to tune your damn instrument, and so shut up. Don't give that music store 3 stars out of 5 just because a stupid thing didn't turn up tuned. That's what tuning pegs or tuning keys are for. I was thinking of my violin. Tune it. Go to a YouTube video. How do I tune my mandolin? Don't pollute the reviews with stupid comments. Pricing, blah, blah, blah. Really, if, I know what it's like not to have money, and you might not be serious. I want to try out a mandolin. I have no idea. So, buy the Rogue. Spend the money, but buy from a music shop that will set it up and make sure the thing doesn't arrive in 3 pieces. But then the next step up is don't leapfrog. You're going to be in it with a carved instrument, arch top, minimum of $400. Just suck it up. I mean, if you want to have a mandolin that you're going to play that sounds good, minimum of $400. That's it. No question about it. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. You're going to spend at least $400 for a mandolin to get a good one, a decent one. Next up, humidity or dehumidify. These 2 mandolins, which I treasure, which are set up well. I did the setup work on this. Did some, I think, fret work. I'm not sure. I got a lot of instruments. But I care for these. It's Michigan. Northern Michigan, to be precise. Forced air heating. And so I'm not going to torture these things by keeping them in the living room. I have actually a climate-controlled room, and all that means is I've got a humidifier. Keep it about 50-55% humidity so the wood doesn't dry out, so things don't twist, so things don't crack. Take care of your instruments. If you don't have a humidifier, or if it's going to be stored in like a dry place, get a hygrometer, and that tells you the relative humidity in your abode. If you can't, you can humidify it. You can get humidifiers for instrument cases. Keep them in the instrument case. Keep them humidified. Do some YouTube research. Okay, I've talked long enough. You're all going to run out and buy a Kentucky KM 270 or a 170, I think it is. Kentucky and Eastman. Again, in the mid-range, your best bets. And go to Mandolin Cafe. That is all. This has been the best round of advice for buying a mandolin on YouTube, bar none. Little story. Not only are there people that don't have a clue about mandolins giving mandolin reviews on YouTube, you also have to be careful about people that are in the elite players that have never really, or in the near past, have roamed around the sub $1,000 mandolin world. And I was watching one, I'm not going to mention any names, this guy's a tremendous player, and he plays stuff like Lloyd Lower signed F5s, which, these are a minimum of like $120,000 mandolins. But he hasn't prowled around the lower depths of the mandolin world, the sub 1000s. And so it's like, wow, dude, you were actually giving kind of bad advice because you're not familiar with scraping the bottom like I am. Plus, you didn't mention Mandolin Cafe. That right there would be enough. That's all.